Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. But today is Monday, the 29th of May, 2023. The fifth month of the year is coming to an end, and we've got lots of stories to discuss with you. Without further ado, these are the highlights of today's show. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, with the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's appeal for national unity after winning the national elections by a 4% margin, and of course he got 52.4% vote as far as his runoff election is concerned, and now he becomes one of the longest serving presidents in the history of Turkiye. He is also looking forward to a lot of positivity as far as the future of Turkey is concerned, and his popularity is the reason why he managed to again get to the position of the presidency of Turkey. We wish him all the very best from all of Pakistan, of course, here at Pakistan Television. This is going to be our first segment. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, whose plans to normalize the controversial action of the 5th of August 2019 has met with disastrous results. He tried to hold a summit of the G20 on tourism in the illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, but there were many countries why they did not attend, or the countries that sent a low-level delegation to attend this summit. This shows that many of the countries in the G20, if not all, are directly or indirectly not happy with the decision of India to have had a summit in a disputed region. This said, a lot of issues also are happening in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir as we speak, and the barbarities of the Indian forces continue unabated as they have since the last few years. This is going to be our second story. Then we are going to talk about the International United Nations Peacekeepers Day that is being observed today to highlight the role of United Nations peacekeeping forces all across the world. And when we talk of United Nations peacekeepers, how can we not talk about Pakistani peacekeepers? 171 Pakistani soldiers, including 27 officers, have sacrificed their precious lives for the restoration of global peace under the auspices of the United Nations peacekeepers. This is going to be our last story. Let's begin with our first segment, and that concerns the runoff presidential elections in Turkiye and Recep Tayyip Erdogan emerging victorious. More in the following report.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has won re-election in a presidential election runoff, according to country's Supreme Election Council. 6 opposition groups had formed an unprecedented unified bloc behind Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu to try to defeat Erdogan, but he managed to secure another 5-year presidential term. Speaking to thousands of his supporters outside the presidential complex in Ankara, Erdogan said that now was the time to put aside all the debates and conflicts regarding the election period. Touching upon a central theme of elections, Erdogan emphasized that the most urgent issue in the country is currently inflation, adding that it is not difficult to solve the problem. Erdogan added that healing the wounds of the February earthquakes and rebuilding the cities and towns destroyed in the natural disaster would continue to be among his priorities. World leaders are sending congratulatory messages to Tayyip Erdogan on historic win. Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif described the long-reigning Turkish leader as a pillar of strength for the oppressed Muslims as well as ardent voice of the inalienable rights. High-stakes election ultimately decided the fate of key NATO ally and regional power broker at a time when world is bracing for tumultuous geopolitical shifts.
Dr. Selcuk Aydin, who's an analyst, joins us all the way from Turkiye. Dr. Selcuk Aydin, thank you very much to have joined us. And of course, another 5-year term begins for Mr. Recep Tayyip Erdogan as the president of your brotherly country. How does it feel now, and what are the expectations of the people in Turkey as far as this 5-year term is concerned? A lot of challenges await Mr. Erdogan, don't they?
Yeah, of course, this result is going to influence everything in Turkey, and last more than 1 year, Turkey in the election atmosphere, and this after the election, economy would be the biggest challenge for the President Erdogan, and also next year it will be municipal election. So. Yesterday, during the election result night, President Erdogan's speech is, we can say, is based on the upcoming election as well and economy. So the Turkish political atmosphere is going to very challenging as well, and it would we can't say that it will be like a 5 years peace and 5 years term of president would be calm and peaceful because next year we have another election.
All right. I would like to understand, Mr. Aydin, as far as the speech of Mr. Erdogan is concerned, there are different elements that I'd like to discuss with you. First of all, he has talked about unity and solidarity amongst the people of Turkey. I'll quote what he said: "We should come together in unity and solidarity. We call for this with all our heart." How important is unity and solidarity within the people, and why make this call?
First of all, I can easily say you this presidential election is the biggest challenge for President Erdogan because previous two president election he was able to pass 50% and he was elected as a president in the first round. It is the first election he was elected as a president in the second round, and he calls to solidarity among the people in Turkey because this election process was so we can say tension was so high. That's why he wants to mention these election result wouldn't harm any of the people, any of the opposition. That's why he called for the solidarity among the Turkish people.
Also, Seljuk, I'd like to understand, he also spoke about how nobody has lost and that 85 million have won as a whole. How important is this remark as well in order to create more solidarity among the people, whether they belong or whether they have voted for Mr. Erdogan or whether they have voted for the opposition?
Indeed, yes, that's the the for the politicians, these kind of words are a bit like how can I say political words. So we can't say that this election result would be like happy for all the Turkish people because 40 almost 8% voters chose the another candidate, Mr. Kılıçdaroğlu, and also. President Erdogan, like more than 20 years, he elected as a president, and previously he was a prime minister. So he is running Turkey more than 2 decades. And after elections, if you look at the President Erdogan's speech, if you analyze his discourse, this election discourse is a bit more tensious in comparing with the previous elections. That's why, as I said to you, next year would be another election, and this tension is going to rise again.
All right, Seljuk, I'd also like to understand, you talked about economy as being one of the major challenges as far as Mr. Erdogan's new 5-year term is concerned. In his previous term, let's go back to 2021, he wanted to slash interest rates at all costs way back in 2021. Do you feel this can be applicable now because he wants to apply his economic policies that he wanted to apply in his last term, this term? Do you feel this will be perceived with a positive reaction from the different economic institutions across Turkey?
Of course, because as I said, more than 1 year we are in the election atmosphere. In comparing the municipal election, it is the more important and significant. So for the economists, the result, whether Erdogan is president or the Kılıçdaroğlu, they were waiting the election. It should pass because the election atmosphere harmfully affect the economy. And last 1 year, Turkey was in the election economy. So President Erdogan was opening everything for the society. It was so how can I say, use economy as a for the election campaign. That's why for the reasonable choice, there were some problems in the economy. That's why after the election, economists are waiting that that will be better because everybody knows that President Erdogan is going to run country for 5 years, and also he is going to be more rational in economic policies. And people are generally waiting to Erdogan's previous economic policy till like last 3 years, because previously his economic policies are more rational, but this election atmosphere changed everything. Turkish lira dropped incredibly, and many sectors are very much manipulative. So people are waiting for stable economy after the election.
Also, the fact remains that Turkey has gone through a devastating time of post-earthquake relief and rehabilitation. You've lost scores of lives, infrastructure, and of course the economy has taken a worse turn because of the effects of this earthquake as well. This would also be the humanitarian challenge that also awaits Mr. Erdogan will be very important in the coming months.
Absolutely, as you know, the earthquake is called centuries devastated. Yeah, and also if you look at 11 cities has been affected by the earthquake, and also we can easily say 4 or 5 cities was like a 80% harm. That's why it is very much challenging for the running government. And for the international respected institutions, according to international respected institutions, the cost of the earthquake more than $100 billion. So for the any economy in the world, it will be so challenging for Erdogan as well. But the advantage of Turkey, construction companies are so strong, particularly during last decade, and Turkey has huge construction companies, and state has a TOKİ and Emlak Konut, two different institutions for the construction. So people are waiting fast and quality solutions for this construction process for the cities.
Coming back to the presidential elections, as you yourself said, this is the first time that Mr. Erdogan has managed to win, but in the runoff presidential elections, but not the first round as in the previous times. Do you feel the opposition's point of views or the way they structured themselves was an important mechanism through which they managed to secure a certain number of percentage points?
It is really good question, but very much hard to answer, because if you look at the opposition, according to the particular representation of the opposition parties, it is a bit success story. But if you look at the people who are voting the opposition parties, they say that there isn't any success story because Erdogan is still in power and more than 2 decades, and economy is not in good situation, and Turkey has been affected by earthquake, and Turkey's relation with the Western countries is a bit problematic as well. So within these circumstances, how Erdogan win the election? That's the question. And previously, Prime Minister of Erdogan's party, Ahmet Davutoğlu, has built a new party and also part of the coalition against Erdogan. Minister Ali Babacan, who was the economic ministry, finance ministry of Erdogan, and who says that I am the behind of all of this economic success story, was also part of the coalition. And Saadet Partisi, this party was also the AK Party's background party, because AK Party has emerged from this Saadet Party. So these conservative parties also support this coalition against Erdogan and Kılıçdaroğlu's representation, and Kurdish party also, pro-Kurdish Rights Party, HDP, also supported Kılıçdaroğlu's candidacy. But still, they are not able to
garner the support that
Erdogan.
Mr. Erdogan managed to get, especially in the runoff presidential election. But this said, there is a difference of almost 4 percentage points, if I'm not wrong, between what Mr. Erdogan got, around 52.14%, and what the opposition got. Do you feel that the political alliances that were made, you talked about those alliances, but I'd like to understand how the alliance with a pro-Kurdish party by the opposition, which Erdogan had called in the past as a political wing of banned militants, and of course Sinan Ogan, who won 5% of the first round vote, had publicly endorsed Erdogan. How did these political alliances also play their role in your point of view?
Yeah, that's the like in Turkey, this election influenced people very differently because historically, Turkish Nationalist Party are against very much the Kurdish political parties, and if you look at this election, pro-Kurdish party was with Kılıçdaroğlu, the opposition candidate, and there is a E party, good party, and this party is Turkish Nationalist Party, and they were together. And in the second round, ultra-nationalist far-right Ümit Özdağ's Zafer Party is also supported Kılıçdaroğlu's candidacy. That's why people were so very much interesting situation because they don't like each other, but they are supporting same candidate. It almost happened for the Erdogan's candidacy, but still the parties or leaders who support Erdogan has a very much common ground because Hüdapar, which is the Kurdish Conservative Party, also the part of AKP list in the MP list. And also this Kurdish party hasn't any, let's say, like a HDP, hasn't any relation with the separatists or the terrorist movement. But still, they are pro-Kurdish rights as well, which is against the Turkish nationalist approach, and Turkish nationalist MHP is with Erdogan as well. And Sinan Ogan, as you said, he is the nationalist leader and candidate in the first round, and he's against the refugees who are living in Turkey, and their population is about 5 million. But still, they came for the common sense for the solution this part as well. That's the interesting part of the election because it is because of the presidential system in Turkey. If you want to be president, you have to secure more than 50% of the votes. That means that you have to do some alliance with the different political perspective within your coalition and alliance.
All right. Selcuk, I would also like to understand, the policies that Mr. Erdogan has. You have said that as far as the economy is concerned, he will try to continue with the same policies that he's had in the last 3 years. What about his independent foreign policy? Do you feel the different pillars of his policy as far as his relations with other countries in the region is concerned will continue, or do you feel there might be certain changes that we will see in the coming months?
I don't think there would be some substantial changes because Erdogan has a good relation with Russia, and I believe that it will continue. And also, Turkey has good relation with some Muslim-populated countries like Pakistan. 100% it will be same, and Gulf countries. And also, Erdogan's foreign policy has changed about more than years ago. Because Turkey has some clash with the Gulf countries, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Egypt, and they found a solution for these problems. But the biggest challenge for Erdogan's foreign policy is the Sweden's process in NATO. So Turkey rejected the Sweden's application to NATO because of the Sweden's position in terrorism, and also, as you know, a few months ago they burned the Quran, Holy Quran. So this policy would be the biggest challenge for Turkey in relation with the Western countries. And also, secondly, the biggest challenge for Turkey in the Cyprus issue and Mediterranean case between Turkey and Greece.
A lot of issues are happening, a lot of geostrategic or geopolitical changes are happening in the world, and on a very quick pace. So let's see how Turkiye comes or adapts to that, or will it retain the same independent foreign policy, as you yourself have said, Selcuk, in the coming months as well? Now, let's come to the voters. Now, 64 million Turks were eligible to cast their votes, and 5 million of those were first time voters, which were between the ages of 18 and 22. How important is this vote of the Turkish youth as far as this election and the coming election is concerned? What do the youth think about Turkey? How do they want to take it forward?
As you know, in many places, the youth's political behavior is more reactionary. So in Turkey's election, leaders have found that youths are more nationalist in Turkey and very much against the refugee policy of Turkey. That's why if you look at the Sinan Ogan's voters are generally youths. That's the problem for the both alliances. How to find a solution for the youth's political behavior right now in Turkey, and involvement of the youths in politics is very much reactionary, and as I said, it is really hard for both alliances, and particularly for Erdogan, because the Erdogan's policy is for generally his base generally more than 30 years old, but the youth people are very much, as I said, reactionary, and they don't know other political leaders as well, because Erdogan is governing Turkey more than 2 decades.
All right. Also, Selcuk, I'd like to understand what makes Mr. Erdogan a huge leader, a champion as far as the poor society of Turkey is concerned. What makes him so popular amongst them?
First of all, as you know, everybody says that he is very much charismatic leader. That's quite clear, and even the oppositions, even the who are hating Erdogan, accepted that Erdogan is very much charismatic leader. That's quite clear, first of all. And secondly, people don't understand the political fault lines of Turkey, because if you look at the Turkish politics, there is significant political fault lines in Turkey's political area. First one is Turkish nationalism. Second one is conservatism. Third one is the more, let's say, the liberal and left-wing political position. What Erdogan did in his more than 2 decades political career, first of all, when he came to power, he was very much liberal, and he is quite clearly representing the conservative people in Turkey. But after 2015, his liberal policies has down and decreased, and he chose that Turkey should be more nationalist, because Turkey has quite significant problems in the borderland area in Syria, Iraq, and Iran, and United States of America's issues, and Russia in Ukraine. It started with Crimea and then involved in the Ukrainian lands. That's why Erdogan started to follow more nationalist politics, And if you look at Erdogan, is always, as I said, it is quite clear that he is representative of the conservative people in Turkey. He can also manage the Turkish nationalists and also very much liberal policies for the minorities, refugees, and every walks of life. I think Erdogan's success stories, behind of his success story, is based on he is playing very well with the political fault lines of Turkey.
All right, Selcuk, I'd like to understand the world response that came as a result of Mr. Erdogan getting another 5-year term. What I want to get this response is in context with Turkey's relationship with the NATO countries. And I'd like to quote Mr. Joe Biden, who tweeted, quote unquote, "I look forward to continuing to work together as NATO allies on bilateral issues and shared global challenges." How is now the re-election of Erdogan going to impact Turkey's relation with NATO and the West? And of course, in also the context of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, we know that the Black Sea Grain Corridor initiative was initiated by Mr. Erdogan that unlocked millions of tons of wheat, averting a global hunger crisis. Would Mr. Erdogan continue to play an important role as far as averting such crises in the future is concerned?
Uh, I think Syria changed Turkish foreign policy very much deeply and substantially because in Syria, Turkey first, before the Syrian internal war, Turkey was following zero problems in borderland in the other countries. But Turkey finds that if there is a problem, they have to choose one. And in Syrian case, Turkey was very much close to the United States of America, but they couldn't find a solution. After that, Turkey was aware of that. Turkey has a problem with Russia. Turkey has a problem with the USA. Turkey has a problem with the Middle Eastern countries. So Turkey's foreign policy turned from zero problems to problem with all countries. And then Turkey learned how to deal with all countries. And when Ukraine crisis happened, Turkey didn't follow Western sanction against Russia. Turkey didn't follow NATO policies 100% like against Russia. Turkey didn't follow that. Turkey was trying to find a solution between NATO and Russia and the United States of America because in Syrian case, Turkey find that if Turkey is going to be part of one group, it is going to harm Turkey economically and in the regional policy, in the world policy. That's why Turkey is trying to find a solution in the region, not a conflict, not a war. And as a result of this policy, I think world should be very much thankful to Turkish this policy because of this Green Deal, as you say. Otherwise, Turkey, the world was going to face a food crisis. That's why people overwhelmingly in Turkey right now supporting Turkish foreign policy,
And that
regardless
is
their
important.
political
I think these
background.
principles of foreign policy that were initiated by Mr. Erdogan need to continue. And as you yourself have said, Selcuk, that this is something that you look forward to as well. And we also are looking forward to this new 5-year presidential term of Mr. Recep Tayyip Erdogan. And we look forward to a stronger, closer relationship between our two countries as well. Thank you so very much, Dr. Selcuk Aydin, analyst, joining us all the way from Turkiye. And of course, we'll continue to have you on board whenever something important happens in Turkey. Thank you very much for your participation this time. Let's come to our second segment, and that concerns India, the G20 summit that was held in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and how their attempt to kind of normalize the 5th August 2019 abrogation of Article 370 became a total failure, whether it be on the national front or also in the international front. Media across the world are talking about this more in the following report.
India's presidency of the G20 group has been marred by controversies due to irresponsible tactics and tendency to politicize global forums for narrow political objectives. India's attempt to normalize its occupation of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir has suffered a serious setback as a number of G20 countries refused to attend the moot in Srinagar. The decision by several nations to boycott the G20 event in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir highlights Pakistan's diplomatic success in encouraging the international community's concerns and firm stance against holding meetings in disputed territories. China in particular took the lead in boycotting the Srinagar G20 meeting, joined by countries like Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Indonesia and Egypt. The diplomatic setback for India reflects a growing solidarity with the oppressed people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and raises questions about India's attempts to normalize its illegal hold on Kashmir. The boycott serves as a wake-up call for India to reflect on the reasons behind the international community's reservations and address the underlying issues surrounding the Kashmir dispute. The international community's support for the Kashmiri people and their refusal to attend the Srinagar G20 meeting is a clear demonstration of solidarity and Pakistan's robust diplomacy of highlighting Kashmir cause. The boycott signifies the growing concerns about the plight of the Kashmiri people and emphasizes the need for a just and peaceful resolution to the Kashmir dispute.
Dr. Shabana Fayyaz, Foreign Affairs expert, joins us in the studio to talk about this segment. Dr. Sahaba, thank you very much to have come to the studios. It had been some time that we had discussed important, relevant issues concerning Pakistan, and this one, of course, is directly and indirectly relevant to Pakistan as well. Since India's abrogation of Article 370 and, of course, 35A as well on the 5th of August 2019, India has time and again, through various maneuvering or measures, normalize this whole post 5th of August 2019 situation. Recently, of course, with the summit of the G20 in Srinagar. But it kind of backfired, not kind of backfired, majorly backfired, because not only did the media in the entire world highlight the Kashmir issue instead of downplaying it, but also highlighted the fact that many of the countries did not attend it. Also in India, the media highlighted, whether it be WION, whether it be Hindustan Times or other important publications. Do you feel that India is trying to normalize this situation through the summit was indeed a political and diplomatic failure?
Yes, you very rightly said, Omar Saab. India has been using the Indian occupied Kashmir as portraying to the world that it is a flagship project of peace and prosperity. And the very resolutions that they adopted in 2019 August, mainly one of the purpose was that we are going to reconstruct the economic face of the Indian occupied Kashmir, that's what we say, and we want to integrate them into the society so that the benefits of prosperity are shared equally. But we all know how the things have turned out. It was totally rejected by the Kashmiri people. It was totally rejected, and it was exposed the human rights violation that occurred. The valley saw the longest internet blockade, and and certain measures that were very, very hard. Even during the COVID, they were subjected to strict control measures, and this right to speech was curtailed. So in that background, this was a sort of moment that they tried to cash in New Delhi, and they said, that's why it is G20. One of the main purpose was it is a tourism group meeting was there, and the idea of placing there in Srinagar was that we are going to raise the money and spend it here.
But the fact remains that you do something on tourism in a totally blocked out interiors, and then you've got drones flying all over, and you've got strict security measures all around. I mean, it's very ironical. It's very ironic rather that you have such a summit in an area and you talk of tourism, whereas there is everything, all the measures that are being done are totally to the contrary, aren't they?
Exactly, this is what happened, in all the international news channels. They flagged the stories that it was fabricated world. It was something that was, the event happened in a bubble, and that was surrounded by a heavily guarded people, and it actually isolated the Kashmiris from the real thing that was happening there. And actually the inhabitants of the people of Indian occupied Kashmirs were pushed against the wall. And and the idea was, just as you have said, to portray to the world that we are coming in, they are integrated, we are going to pass of that. But important was that when the international actors, specifically the China, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Egypt and Turkey, when they they refrained from attending and registering this for this meeting, so that really signaled the amount of diplomatic failure
and
that
the other
happened
countries
as a
that
result
sent
of this
low-level
event.
delegations as well.
Yes.
Those who participated, a lot of them sent low-level delegations, not their important people concerning the tourism industry or the Ministry of Tourism, and that was also, I think, a direct or an indirect signal to India as far as all of the situation in the Indian Hill Valley is concerned. What do you agree?
Well, I do agree with that, but I also must state here that it was also a very important point for Islamabad to note that look, your diplomatic efforts are being delivered on ground, and it's not only the Islamabad that needs to register that, it was the Kashmiri people, the indigenous Kashmiri people, whether they are living in Indian occupied Kashmir, in Azad Kashmir, and the Kashmiri diaspora, that were all in one of the western capitals. They see the placards that there is a black blood on the face of India. So it is documented fact. So even the Kashmiri diaspora diaspora were very, very, hurt by this move of the New Delhi. So in fact, what really I think has to be realized is that the people's security cannot be at the expense of the facade of tourism and things like that.
I like that the fact that you say people's security cannot be at the expense of the facade of tourism, because this is exactly what Mehbooba Mufti Sahiba said. She said that the illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir has been turned into Guantanamo for the G20 summit, with it looks like a huge prison, especially for this. Can India continue to act as if everything is normal, whether it be nationally or internationally? Can it call itself a democracy or a pluralistic country when the world is seeing what is happening in the Hill Valley?
I think it has really triggered once again the debate that exists within the intelligentsia and civil society and political actors or stakeholders of India. We have seen earlier the Rahul Gandhi visit to Srinagar, and he was then cordoned off, not allowed to speak to the indigenous, the people who were suffering at the Indians' hand, New Delhi's hand. So this has happened, and also a lot of the intellectual thought process of the Indian civil society, they have rejected this, the summit, and all they want is the peace. And the peace for them and for us as well only comes through a dialogue. And that also must recognize the wishes and aspirations of the Kashmiri people.
But that dialogue, leave alone the referendum or the right to self-determination, is not happening anywhere under the this governance of Narendra Modi, because this is against the basic policies that he has stood for. It stands against all the philosophy of the RSS, doesn't it? Because what he wants to do is to make the entire region a Hindu majority or a 100% Hindu majority area.
Yes, ethnic cleansing and the demographic cleansing has been going on in Indian occupied Kashmir for quite long, because if you read after the UN, it is one of the Kashmir issue is the longest unresolved issue on the agenda of the United Nations, more than 7 decades or so. But what happens is that the right of settlement even in Azad Kashmir here cannot be accorded to the people from the mainstream of Pakistan, because it's only there they can invest and excel, because it remains disputed, and that has to be fulfilled, the aspirations of the Kashmiri people. But there, after August 2019, they have changed that. And so they have used the force to quieten the indigenous people. They have really pushed into the major, the through quota system and other religious people who have to settle there. So this is one thing. Another thing is that importantly, yes, diplomatic efforts can have important messages that if the internationally influencer actors like the United States, even the Russia and others who are the major trader partners of the India, and also the somehow there is a will that they make the party, specifically the India, Pakistan has always been willing for the dialogue, make them agree to sit on the table and and deal with the future of India according to the UN resolutions. That will be that is something that
deal with the
remains
future of the Indian illegally
unfulfilled.
occupied Jammu and Kashmir region. I think that is the most important issue, the most thorny of issues between Pakistan and India, and that has been said time and again by our leadership, that if you want to come down for talks, this is going to be on the agenda as well. You talked about the intelligentsia and the role of those who matter around the world. Not only is it political leaders, but it is also those who we read, who we appreciate. I'd like to give the example of Noam Chomsky, the American philosopher, who, while discussing the Kashmir dispute in a video, you must have seen the message as well, he said it was unconscionable for G20 to hold any kind of meeting in the region of occupied and brutalized Kashmir. When the intelligentsia also talks about it, when you've got journalists talking about it, when you have got international publications from the Washington Post or the New York Times that highlight this, when you've got Indian publications and Indian news channels that are highlighting the failure of India, do you feel it is time for Narendra Modi to rethink his strategy, or do you think he will ever rethink this strategy?
Well, there is no black and white answer to this question. All the political parties, they have their ups and lows and up points. But if you look into the RSS, they have conditioned the talks on the Kashmir, and they keep on accusing Pakistan for interfering and fueling this, according to them, the so-called insurgency. So they are not willing, they have not come out to the point where you say the ripe moment of peace or the dialogue has not come into their mindset. So what from the outside, Arundhati Rai and the other scholars as well, they have been talking about it for a long time, but the fact of the matter is that unless there is an introspection within the BJP, it cannot be moved forward. And this has to be combined with the combined effort of the Indian decision making actors. Here the establishment, the Indian establishment, whether it was under Congress or whatever, they also play a very important role in deciding what to do and when to do. Because obviously politics haven't worked out in Indian occupied Kashmir. You see even the Mehbooba Mufti, who was one time one of the closest part of them, they have backed out. So that moment has gone. So to create the moment even within Indian occupied Kashmir, that there needs to be a talk with the BJP, and then that is a moment that requires a lot of years to come.
Now, the fact remains that the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir remains a disputed region as per various United Nations resolutions. Just by holding a summit of the G20 in this region, don't you feel India has gone flagrantly against the United Nations Charter? Do you feel the United Nations will respond at any time as far as this event is concerned?
Yes, it is definitely against the UN resolutions because it is a disputed territory. You cannot have that. But again, the force has dictated, and there the central government, the New Delhi government has done this. And unfortunately, we see is that United Nations, I don't think so, they have come out with a statement that they shouldn't be having a moot here in Srinagar. So this is something I think that is a very telling point, that although we have a very strong statements coming up from the UN human rights representatives earlier after 2019 and documentary reports who have said that there has been enormous negativities by the Indian forces being carried out in that area. But this time I don't recall there is any statement, but this is a sort of a very complex situation, you see. Most important is that those who are deciding, that is very important, and somehow those who are at the receiving end, the way they have been quietened, the way they have been pushed behind the curtain, this is something is a very gruesome act of not giving human rights to the very citizens or even the indigenous part of the Kashmir where they live in.
But on the one hand, we see what's happening in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. On the other hand, we see what's happening in Palestine. We're seeing also what is happening in Ukraine and how the West is coming together and investing billions and billions of dollars to help Ukraine. But then not a word on either the Indian-held valley or Palestine as well. When you look at such a geopolitical or strategic development that is global in nature, especially by the global north, do you feel India's exploitation of its position as the current chair of G20 to advance its self-serving agenda serves a purpose to India? Does it use this forum in the right vein, looking at the way the important countries that matter are also using it?
I think it's both ways. India has very skillfully and very, in a very twisted the story other way around for those who were sitting on the table, number one. And number two is the quietness of the major actors. We often say that I think, imagine if the Kashmir was not in South Asia, it was somewhere in Central Europe, it was somewhere in, in the hot spot of the realist world, the situation could have been different. But at the most important point is that unfortunately, the neighbors and specifically the strong neighborhood is not there, and Pakistan is the only one that is really affected. Unfortunately, they continue to ignore the fact that India-Pakistan hostilities and others is not only a threat to the countries, both countries, it is a threat to the region.
Both are
and
nuclear
it can
powers.
go even more because Kashmir has been stated as one of the nuclear flashpoint, and if it is because being the nuclear neighbors, it can move outside the South Asia, and so it has to be taken into that consideration. Pakistan has been regularly diplomatically and at different forums being airing this concept, you have to resolve it, but unfortunately we see is whenever there is a movement forward, there is a step backward. So this somehow on both sides and including the international community has not been able to resolve it according to the United Nations forums. So there came the point when the Indian themselves, they say we are not interested in UN resolutions, but then at the same point when they need a scoring, they said yes, we are maintaining the human rights standards according to the UN
when they don't even allow the UNMOGIP to enter the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, but they do not allow the international media to enter the illegally occupied valley in order to ascertain what the exact truth is. In this whole manifestation of falsehoods as far as the illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir region is concerned, what is the way forward for the people in the occupied valley to move forward in order to somehow achieve their right to self-determination?
It is a very complicated story. If you look into the statistics that have been coming out from Indian occupied Kashmir, the psychological mindset, the hopelessness has gripped the young generation. But this is multiplied by the rigorous strive for a breakaway from India and to come out of the clutches of the occupation that has been with them. So it goes side by side, and when you're too much hopeless, but you feel that that is the only weapon you can strike, is that is the your right to self-determination. So that is something that I really feel is something that that will gain more momentum. The more you try to silence the people, ultimately you can kill the 100 souls, but you cannot kill the 1,000 future souls. So this is very important, and the Indian occupied Kashmir, this is a struggle of the people. They are unsung heroes, for the Indian at large, but these are the ones who have really seen the worst of the policy makings because of not following the human rights standards.
But that is so true, Dr. Shabana Fayyaz, and I really hope for mankind that issues such as the illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, Palestine issue come to an end, come to a fruitful conclusion. So also the Ukraine-Russia conflict comes to an end. We around the world are in dire need of peace, are in dire need of breathing a sigh of relief, that everything can be normal, a day can be normal without us thinking of the repercussions of X, Y or Z conflict. And it is high time that the world understands or realizes this and comes out of this whole war concept and illegal occupation concept and try to give people their due rights. This is what human rights is all about. Thank you so very much, Dr. Shabana Fayyaz, to have joined us, to have come to the studios. It was wonderful seeing you. I hope to see more of you in the coming days as well. Let's come to our last story, ladies and gentlemen, that concerns the International Day of United Nations Peacekeepers that is being observed today. This is, of course, a day that is being held every day on this very day to highlight the role of United Nations peacekeeping forces for maintaining world peace. And the role of Pakistan when it comes to world peace cannot be denied. During the entire peacekeeping missions of the United Nations across the world, Pakistani peacekeepers have given it their all, also have given their lives. 171 Pakistani soldiers, 27 officers have sacrificed their precious lives for restoration of global peace. And services from Pakistan continue in different missions across the world. The day commemorates the efforts of the United Nations to eliminate human suffering by establishing a situation of lasting peace in countries with wars and internal conflicts. I was just talking about all of this with Dr. Shabana Fayyaz, and it's so pertinent that we see an end to these conflicts. The world needs to be a better place to live in for our current generations, for our future generations. Let's say a prayer for that and hope for the very best. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with new story segments that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. Allah Hafiz.